Midnight, 1998. In a cold concrete warehouse on the outskirts of a nameless Midwestern town, a single bare bulb flickers overhead, casting long, trembling shadows on the damp floor as a man collapses to his knees. Blood seeps beneath him, spreading in dark rivulets. A hooded figure raises a pistol. The sound echoes off the walls. In that moment, the world seemed to end, but it didn't, because weeks later, an almost forgotten clue would emerge to unravel everything. Today we tell the story of a life nearly extinguished, of an innocent man they nearly executed. It was a chilly November evening, 1998, when 28-year-old schoolteacher Michael Carter left the modest two-bedroom house he shared with his fiancée Clara on Maple Street to run a quick errand at the corner convenience store. The neighborhood was quiet, almost desolate, lit only by the weak glow of streetlights through drifting smoke from Clara's cigarette. Michael walked with purpose, his breath visible in the frigid air, oblivious to the shadows edging through alleys behind him. In that same town, a brutal robbery and murder had shocked the community just days earlier, and police pressure was mounting. The victim had been a wealthy local businessman. Found dead in his garage with multiple gunshot wounds, the victim's safe emptied. The town was rattled. Nerves were raw. Fear spread in whispers among neighbors. Rumors swirled. Everyone was looking for someone to blame. Minutes after Michael left home, Clara heard the door slam. She assumed he had returned until a frantic knock at the door shattered the silence. Two detectives stood in the doorway, their faces drawn, their badge-clad jackets soaked from rain. "Your fiancé." "We need to talk," one said softly. Confused and terrified, Clara staggered as the world seemed to tilt. Within hours, Michael was arrested, accused of the businessman's murder. The evidence seemed damning. A pair of fingerprints on the victim's car door, a dark-colored jacket matching descriptions from two witnesses near the crime scene. And most damning of all, Michael's wallet found in a garbage can behind a nearby diner about a mile from the murder scene. The local media exploded. "Teacher turned killer?" screamed one headline. "Community betrayal. Did Clara's fiancé pull the trigger?" read another. Fear turned to outrage. The town demanded swift justice. When Michael was led into the interrogation room, harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting deep shadows around the metal table where he sat trembling. Detectives pounded him with questions. "Where were you the night of November 5th? Why did your wallet turn up near the diner half a mile from where the victim was found? Who were you meeting? Admit it, you were the one who broke in." Michael's voice cracked. He said he had been at home, gripped by a sudden migraine. He had no idea how his wallet ended up near the diner. Maybe it fell during his errand. He pleaded innocence, fear flickering in his eyes. But the pressure mounted. With no alibi, with forensic evidence seemingly building, investigators closed in. The trial began less than a month later. The public gallery was packed. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras clicked. The prosecution painted a portrait of a desperate man, debts mounting, pressure from creditors, hidden visits to dubious acquaintances, all pointing to premeditated robbery. Two low-level informants testified they saw a man matching Michael's build near the victim's garage the night of the crime. One described seeing him wearing a dark jacket, pacing in the shadow. The other claimed he heard muffled cries and gunshots. The jury looked grim as more testimony piled up, neighborhood surveillance footage, grainy but showing a figure with Michael's outline. Ballistic report tying bullets to a gun found discarded behind the diner, and the ominous discovery of the wallet. Amid the haze of accusations, Michael's defense tried desperately to weave a counter-narrative. They argued the surveillance video was too blurry to identify the figure definitively, that the fingerprints on the car door could have been transferred innocently. Maybe the victim had opened the door for Michael days earlier when he dropped off supplies for his school. As for the wallet, the defense claimed that Michael's car had broken down near the diner weeks before. He had retrieved Tow services left his wallet in the car glove box and never got it back until after the crime. That story, however, sounded thin compared to the prosecution's dramatic case. Emotions ran high in the courtroom. The judge's gavel fell repeatedly during objections. Spectators gasped when a defense investigator revealed how sloppy certain police procedures had been. A failure to bag the wallet properly, a chain of custody breach. But in the court of public opinion, those details fell silent. The verdict came down swiftly, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Michael to death. The moment the gavel struck, Clara screamed, fainted. Outside the courthouse, reporters scrambled for statements. Neighbors watched with stunned horror or bitter relief. Some wept, some cheered. The community was split, a wave of grief, a wave of anger. Michael was transferred to death row within days. Behind cold bars, under harsh glare, he awaited execution. A somber guard locked the cell. His wrists were shackled, his eyes hollow. He spoke little, often staring at the wall, hugging memories of Clara, of innocence lost. Yet as days inched toward the execution date, whispers of doubt began to stir among a few of Michael's supporters. A young defense attorney, Sarah Mills, asked to review the case files more closely, driven not by hope of winning, but by a need to know the truth. She spent nights poring over evidence reports, case transcripts, lab logs. She noticed something troubling. The ballistic report claimed bullets matched the gun found behind the diner, but the chain of custody for that gun was weak. No fingerprint analysis had been done on the police gloves used to recover the weapon. She also found that the surveillance footage used by the prosecution had never been time-stamped accurately. Worse, the timestamps had been overwritten after copying. She realized the figure seen pacing near the crime scene may not have been Michael at all. The lighting, the movement, even the coat could have belonged to someone else. Driven by nagging suspicion, she requested permission to dig deeper. The judge, under pressure from prosecutors and the victim's family, initially denied the motion. Time was running out. The public demanded closure. The execution date was locked. But Sarah pressed on, quietly contacting an independent forensics expert, offering to pay out of her own pocket.
The expert agreed to re-examine the bullet casings, the gun, and any trace evidence. Weeks later, in a dimly lit lab, the expert made a discovery. On one of the bullets recovered from the victim's body, there were microscopic particles of paint, peculiar greenish flecks, not consistent with paint from Michael's apartment, car, or any location connected to him. Inkste. The paint matched doorframe paint used in the warehouse district near the steel fabrication plant, a known meeting point for a local gang notorious for robberies. The expert also found fibers embedded in the victim's clothing, fibers from a thick wool coat, dyed dark forest green. That color did not match the jacket Michael was alleged to have worn, which had been brown. It matched instead a coat described by a different witness, who had seen a suspicious man fleeing the scene minutes after gunshots. This new information cast the entire prosecution's case into doubt. Armed with the expert's findings, Sarah filed an emergency motion for new trial. Public pressure began to shift. On the night before the scheduled execution, a small vigil was held by Michael S. supporters outside the prison gates. Flickering candles and cold wind, silent prayers, tear-stained faces. A hush fell over the crowd. At midnight, Sarah stepped forward holding a thick envelope inside. The forensic report, she whispered into a microphone. This man is innocent. This man will not die for a crime he did not commit. The murmur that rippled through the silent crowd felt like the stirrings of a storm. The court reconvened the next morning. Prosecutors scrambled, their confident composure shaken. Under the glaring scrutiny of a packed courtroom and national media, the judge reviewed the chain of custody lapses, the flawed forensic assumptions, and the newly uncovered microscopic paint and fibers. In a dramatic reversal, the judge vacated the death sentence and ordered a new trial. Michael was released from death row, shackles removed, his legs almost trembling as he exited. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Clara rushed forward, tears of disbelief and relief. She embraced him as the crowd watched in stunned silence. But the drama was far from over. The second trial never came. Instead, facing public scrutiny and pressure from a growing innocence movement, the district attorney dropped all charges. No apology. No compensation. Michael walked free, but not unscathed. The years behind bars, the stigma of media headlines, branding him a killer, the nights when he sat in a cell wondering if death would come, those could never be erased. Clara stayed by his side, but the life they had planned was shattered. He changed his name, moved to a different state, and vowed never to speak publicly again. Even today, though decades have passed, whispers linger. Some believe Michael was guilty and that the forensic twist was a fluke, a clever loophole exploited by a determined defense. Others insist that the paint, the fibers, the sloppy police work, these were more than enough to prove he was innocent. What we know for certain is that one microscopic clue, easy to overlook, invisible at first, buried deep in cold steel, altered the fate of a man whose life hung by a thread, and the real perpetrator never found. The warehouse district remains, abandoned buildings slowly rusting, concrete floors cracked, long shadows dancing under broken lights, no arrests, no confessions. That case file sits sealed, incomplete, a ghost of justice unanswered. So we leave you with this: a teacher, a wrongful conviction, a canceled execution, a community shaken, a life nearly lost and saved by a single, overlooked clue. Who walked away that night from the warehouse district wearing a green wool coat? Who fired the shots and dropped the gun behind the diner? Who walked free under the cover of darkness while an innocent man awaited death? The answers remain hidden. Perhaps they forever will. Midnight Crime Vault. If you dare to ask, who really pulled the trigger? If you enjoyed this chilling story and believe that even one life is worth fighting for, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and join us, because the vault opens again